We got a special edition of Breaking the News Plus tonight because it's going to snow, people, and we live in Minnesota. And I bet if there's anybody at KARE 11 that you would like to sit down, have a cup of coffee with, and ask questions to, it would be anybody from our team of meteorologists. So that's what we're going to try to do today with Ben Derry.
Minus the coffee.
No coffee. It's too late for that, but you might have a late night.
Possibly, yeah. It's always exciting when you see the first snowstorm of the season.
Is it, though?
Well, usually it comes in these little waves, these little teasers. We saw it earlier in the month where we had, a trace of snow a couple of times. Usually we get an inch or so to kind of dip your toe into the proverbial wintry water. Mm-hmm. But now this is kind of starting with a bang. Our first sizable snowfall event happens to be the first chance for measurable snowfall in the Twin Cities. It's going to happen, and things are going to look a lot different outside over the next 24 hours.
It's not every day that we hear you say it is going to happen, but we're at that point now.
Confidence increases with time. As you get closer to the event, everything that you look at starts to unfold. Forecast models become a bit more confident. There's less shifting going along, and we saw that yesterday. We saw a noticeable shift in forecast models that brought the heaviest snow from the Brainerd Lakes area, then down towards St. Cloud, and that did include parts of the Twin Cities metro. And when you see that shift, it's just noticeable. You start to look at it and go, okay, this could really happen. Okay. We could see more than an inch of snow, and that's looking a little bit more likely this time around.
Being the scientist that you are with the training you have in 2025, at times you are competing for people's attention with something you lovingly call social media orologists.
Social media-rologists.
Social media-rologists. These are people on your Facebook, your X, your Instagram, your TikTok that have a forecast for you that may differ from science. Or just goes for it's going to be terrible.
I think their MO is show the model with the most snow.
Okay.
I think that, makes sense for them because most of them you've seen it before on your social media feed. It has big, bold letters, dangerous, hazardous, worst weather ever kind of thing. And it shows a model that just shows everybody getting crushed with snowfall. And it works for their viewers. It gets shares, it gets likes, it goes viral. And then it helps them out because it's probably a paid page. They're getting money to post that when things like that go viral. But then when it doesn't happen, there's no fallback. There's no, sorry, we were wrong on that one. They just move on to the next one. So we face that battle as professional meteorologists every single day, especially when we get into the winter months, when we have sizable weather systems and when we have forecast models that routinely post erroneous forecast numbers, 10, 14 days out. You can look at that as entertainment value, but from an informational standpoint, it can be difficult to fight that. It's an uphill battle for us talking on air and talking with you.
Right. This. And it's the same in news, right? Fighting to just tell people the truth and doing the work to get to that. So that stuff is out there. And the reason I wanted to ask you about it is to try and help people other than saying go to a trusted meteorologist and don't just rely on what you see on Facebook, what kind of information they should be looking for. You and I have talked for years and poked fun, and I'm sure you're celebratory that the Farmer's Almanac is none more with its weather forecasts, those long-term, those long-range outlooks. And everybody wants them, though. Why can't you give us one?
Well, because predicting the future is hard. Just ask any magic 8-ball. You'll shake something up. Are we going to get a foot of snow, on Christmas? It'll say the future is hazy. And that's exactly what it is. We are forecasting chaos is really what's happening. And there are forecast models that do better than others, right? So we trend towards those. But we don't look at, when we look at a long-range forecast model, we're not looking at specifics. We're looking at trends. Is a forecast trending a certain way? We make note of it. And if we continue to see the same forecast model show the same output day after day after day, then it starts to hold a little bit more weight, So with this system, that's impacting us, Tuesday night into Wednesday, We started seeing this about a week out, but it wasn't anything super wild, And because it wasn't happening on Thanksgiving proper, we're just like, okay, it's just going to be, a little snow system. Late in the week, we started to see forecast models kind of hinting at something a bit larger, right? These long-range models, they do a terrible job at predicting small-scale things. Right?
Okay.
We think of a snowstorm as being this big thing, but the main driver of the heaviest snowfall, the processes that drive that are small-scale. We're talking a snow band, a heavy snow band that could drop 1 to 2 inches per hour for a period of 4 or 5 hours. That's actually pretty small scale. So to see long-range forecast models predict crazy amounts of snow, it's tough to, digest that. So as you get closer to an event, as forecast models ingest more data, as the weather system gets a little closer, in theory, forecasts should get better and better. Once you get within, say, 72 hours of an event, the short-term models, the ones with a lower grid scale, those ones that have the high-definition features that can predict those small-scale features that produce the heavy snow bands, then we look at those to see if those kind of agree with those long-term models. And as we get closer to the event, we have the culmination of releasing our official snowfall forecast, which is not just us throwing out a map and saying this is what we think happens. A lot of thought goes into those forecast maps. And especially when we have high levels of uncertainty, like, hey, some of us are going to get 1 to 3 inches, others are probably going to get closer to a foot. When you have higher than average, we'll say, levels of uncertainty, you're not withholding data, but you kind of spread it out a little bit more. Instead of forecasting your city's going to get this many inches, your city's going to get that many inches, we release totals in a range, somewhere between 2 and 5 inches, somewhere between 4 and 8 inches in this area. And then as we get closer, we do release those individual, your city will get X number of inches. But when it comes to forecasting snowfall, there's just too many variables to get a perfect snowfall forecast right.
Yeah.
Too many variables.
Is that the same for rain? Just because it is precipitation, we can't say that it's going to do this or that, or is snow even trickier than rain?
Well, what's the difference between, a half an inch of rain and an inch of rain? It all just kind of floats off and goes into the gutter, and then you don't see it anymore. Difference between a half an inch of moisture that's snow and an inch of moisture, well, you could be looking at the difference between 6 inches of snow and 12 plus inches of snow, and that stays on the ground. So if your forecast is wrong, you're living that mistake until that snow melts, and it kind of has a bit more of an impact on us.
Yeah, that's the personal nature of it too. And you want to get it right because it has a significant livability factor. There is a huge difference to people if it's 3 inches or a foot. That changes things altogether. Schools, if school's not in and you have young kids, who's going to stay home, all kinds of things come into play. So people, they're invested in this being as right as it can be.
Yes, and everybody wants to know, how much snow am I going to get in my backyard?
Sure.
That's really what people want to know, right? But you talk about forecasting rain versus snow. If it's rain, it doesn't really matter what the temperature is. 40 degrees, 50 degrees, 100 degrees, an inch of rain is an inch of rain. But when it comes to snow, different temperature gives you different amounts of snow. If you have temperatures in the lowest levels of the atmosphere that are close to freezing, it's going to be a heavier, wet snow. That impacts something that we call the snow-to-liquid ratio. So a typical snow-to-liquid ratio in the Twin Cities, 10 to 1, 12 to 1. That means for every 1 inch of water, that's 10 inches of snow or 12 inches of snow. But as the temperature gets colder, you tend to see higher snow-to-liquid ratios. And you can have 20 to 1 ratios. You can have 30 to 1 ratios. It all depends on the temperature of the atmosphere. You get to the lowest 5,000 feet. And keep in mind, the temperature varies as you get higher up. So you have a snowflake, let's say it's developing, falls through this layer, this rapid growth, this dendritic growth zone where it grows these big, giant, massive snowflakes, the kind that you see in movies. Well, then it moves through a layer that's a little bit warmer than freezing. That snowflake collapses, and then it turns colder than freezing, and then turns into sleet. And it's just so many different things happen in the sky above us before the snow actually reaches the ground. It makes it very difficult to tell you exactly how much snow is going to fall in your backyard.
The excitement in your voice is palpable.
Thank you.
It's like calling an NFL game in here on what happens to a snowflake as it falls.
Call me John Madden.
All right, last question. This snowfall in late November is probably late for our average, not? Or yes?
Yes. Average first snowfall of the year typically happens the first week of November. But if you recall, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, our first snowfalls come in October. So the fact that it didn't happen this year was kind of an anomaly. Mm-hmm. People think, oh, yeah, snow comes later in November and December. Usually the first snow comes earlier in the year.
Does a late November snow mean a longer winter on the back end? Or does it have any meaning?
Not necessarily. We've seen it in years past where the first snowfall happened around Halloween, and then you get this massive warm-up where you get rain showers, rainstorms all the way through Christmas. So, predicting those long-range events is challenging. But I would say this winter in particular has more things going for it for a more traditional winter. We're talking colder than average and snowier than average than what we've seen in the past.
Okay, that's what my last question was. So what does that mean? Are we going to have a colder and snowier winter? Because the World Wide Web, the internets, are suggesting this to me.
Signs point to yes, as the Magic 8 Ball would say. The reason for that is more than a couple of things. First off, you've probably heard of El Nino and La Nina. It's the ENSO oscillation that is in control of temperatures across the equator in the central and eastern Pacific. And those temperatures, whether they're warmer than average, the waters, or colder than average, have a direct impact on global circulation of wind. And when we have La Nina situations, when we have colder than average water in the central and eastern Pacific near the equator, here in the upper Midwest, it tends to give us colder than average temperatures and wetter than average conditions in a winter, so colder and snowier. Doesn't always happen that way, but it loads the meteorological dice to give us those more traditional winters. On the other hand, El Nino gives us warmer and drier winters. So it's not, the end-all be-all, but that's one of the factors going into our winter this season is we are entering a La Nina winter that should favor colder than average temperatures and more snowfall.
Is that why you wear that sweater?
I just like this sweater. It's just really nice. This is my holiday sweater.
You said this morning, or was it last night, I believe, you took a longer walk than usual because you said it might be the last time you see grass. For a bit.
For a bit, yeah. So, yes, I have 2 Boston Terriers, and they love going on long walks. And it's tougher this time of year when it gets darker earlier. It gets dark at 4:30 or whatever. So we go on walks at 9, 10 o'clock at night whenever, the kids are put to bed. And last night, I took a little extra time going on that walk because I knew that things were going to change. And my walk the following night was not going to be nearly as pleasant.
Tonight's walk?
Yes. 45 degrees and calm wind is going to be a lot better than a driving snowstorm, 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and plummeting temperatures that we're going to see tonight. And the fact that temperatures are going to stay below freezing throughout Thanksgiving holiday weekend, potential for more snow on Saturday, followed by our first real dose of Arctic air. We're talking teens for highs early next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That snow's going to stick around for a while. And while we can't really predict what's going to happen in the middle of the month of December, forecasts have trended to see colder than average temperatures. That could lead to more snowfall. And this is usually the time of year when we see that lasting snowpack. That snowpack that sticks around for more than a couple of days. So that being said, I took a little bit of extra time. The dogs were walking on the grass. That still isn't frozen yet. They enjoyed their time. Let them hang out in the more pleasant conditions because we know what's right around the corner.
Happy holidays, Ben.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Been a real pleasure. That's your extended forecast for BTN Plus.